Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In today's video we are actually taking a look at a game between two of my students. One of my students, Sydney, and my other student, Iris. They decided to host a small tournament between basically all of my students. I know Sydney is preparing for Go Congress that's coming up. She really wants to rank up to around 3 Dawn to 4 Dawn AGA. So she's been putting lots of practice in, and the tournament was kind of an idea she wanted. Surprisingly to me, almost every single one of my students joined, and I decided that I would go ahead and record me reviewing all of the games for them. And so here we are. So this game is between my student David and my student Alexandra. Alexandra's playing black and David is playing white. They're both around, I believe David is 2Q AGA, and I think Alexandra is around 3Q, 4Q EGF, something like that. And yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at it for them. So pretty standard. Now, I have very specific, teachings and things that I let my students know throughout their time. So, for example, you'll see that white plays high here. Now, David's a new student, and Alexandra is one of my longtime students. She's been with me for quite some time. But a lot of lots of new students that come to me, one of the things that they do very often is they'll play low. I allow my DDK students to play low, but I don't allow my SDK students to play low. They all have to play high. It is a very specific rule. So there are going to be a lot of things that I might pick out for David and be like, hey, these are generally not things I allow. And then for, Alexandra, it's going to be more focusing on, maybe stuff we've already talked about. But for the most part, obviously here we see David played correctly. Now, for those that don't understand why, generally, I focus a lot on making sure that we have really, really incredibly good habits as players. It is really common for players, especially Go players, when we're all really aggressive, to kind of throw away the opening, to just play the opening without too much care in the world. We kind of go with this mentality that, oh, it's okay as long as we play the opening to somewhat okay capacity, the game's just going to be even, it's whatever. That is not how my games go personally. That's not how I try to play Go. Especially as a fighter, I believe quite opposite. I think the opening is very important as an aggressive fighter. It's very important to me that I set up my opening in a way that allows me not only to fight from strength, but it also allows me to stabilize in the mid game. And when players play low like this tells me that they often have very bad habits, and one of those bad habits is very often is that they don't know how to use influence. They don't know how to fight towards the center of the board when need be. And usually when a player plays low like this, they're also playing low across the board, and they're trying to work with very low territory. High stones are really important. So the way that I see it is this move is more flexible, but it's almost always the correct move. But be aware that these are almost like a 0.1 difference. This is probably like minus 0.1, 0.2, something like that. It's not that big of a deal, but it is something to pay attention with your own Go. If you do play low here, it is very likely that you play low across the board. I see it all the time with my students. It is one of the biggest differences that I point out immediately for most of my students, and they run with it, and it ends up being makes a huge difference for them. Learn to play high. Learn to play high. It's very important. I only play high these days myself. So this move is okay, but it is slightly outdated. It's not a bad move. It's just one of those moves where it's not really common these days. We kind of go into this idea that we take a base and white takes kind of this blocking the cut move, though I think maybe this is one line lower normally. But it's not common these days. and it's considered slightly better for black now. It's better to find a pincer, whether it be this one or that one, or to basically take the Shusaku diagonal, or even play away is an option, or even kick. Kick is the most simplest one. I'm a big fan of kicking, and I'm a big fan of the Shusaku diagonal. And then if I play in bigger tournaments, I will play into the pinwheel Joseki. But if I'm playing on Fox or something, I do really like the simplicity of the Shusaku diagonal. Keeps the game nice and simple. Now, I actually thought this was a bad move from black when I saw it. But I did make sure to, look at this game and check it out, make sure that, what I wanted to say was made sense, right? But this is actually an okay move by black. It's not a bad move. I think a huge problem is that white actually gets to turn here pretty easily, and black has to kind of respond, and white gets an even further kind of extension. But when black pushes here, white has to fix a lot closer, basically, more like this. So white doesn't really get that big extension, and then black gets to go back and take that extra larger extension, basically. And normally white would just kind of take this a lot closer to protect that cutting point, right? So I guess the way that I would put it is, in this style, in this kind of game where black wants something like this, it would be better for us to go closer. As for if we push, we want to go even further. So you'll see how black plays really close here. So this is going to be really slow. As for in this case, black would want to go actually a little bit further. And this would be more more normal with our larger wall. Similarly to where white would have wanted to go a lot further if white had gotten to get the turn here. So if white had gotten to take this turn, then white would want to go even further. The stronger our wall is, the further we get to bring it, right? But otherwise, it's still thick. It's still a really close game. The game hasn't really gotten out of control for anybody. I would say both players have similarly made very tiny mistakes. So we could say that, for example, this move might have been a small mistake when it happened, but it is so small that we don't want to ever go, oh yeah, that's like a 1-2 point mistake. It's now made the game impossible for white to win. No. We always want to, give ourselves some buffer room when we're trying to gauge the opening, because I don't count the opening. I count the value of my opponent's mistake. So when I'm playing black, I go, okay, my opponent has made something that I would perceive as like a 0.2 to 0.3 mistake. And that's how I would take that. And then here I would probably look at this as the same thing, as a small 0.3 mistake. So I would gauge the game as a pretty even game up right now. Now white chooses to approach. I actually think this move is okay, but I don't think this is where I would go. I'm a big fan of enclosures, so I'd probably play an enclosure here. One good thing you always want to check, though, before you play an enclosure, before you make an approach or anything like that, it's always good to remember that an approach or an enclosure isn't really that big. Like, they're big, but they're not bigger than like an average move. Let me think of a way I would want to put this. My boyfriend kind of usually tried to explain it to me once, and the way that I explain it, okay, I'm gonna explain it to you guys the way that I explain it, but my boyfriend tells me not to explain it this way because he says it's not 100%. He says it's correct, but that it might confuse people. I think it's less confusing. So the way that I say it is that if you take an enclosure, right, and your opponent approaches, you are getting something that is Joseki. And if you're only going to get Joseki out of a result, it is 0.0, which is not entirely correct, right? Obviously, if you add a move to an area, you're going to get something that is bigger. But generally, Joseki means even result. So if you take an extra stone here and black can approach and all you did was go into something that is Joseki, then you are generally getting what we would perceive as an even result, meaning you and your opponent achieve something that is valued at 0.0 for plus for both players, right? Now, obviously, that's not the true value of things. The way that I try to see it is if you take an enclosure, it's worth 5 points, but that you will still go into a Joseki, meaning that the result is even, right? Same if you approach, an approach is only worth 5 points. So basically, when you are looking at the board and you're deciding to approach, just remember that an approach is valued at Joseki, basically. So like, for example, let's say white plays over here on the right side, which I think is a really nice move, one of the possible moves, and black approaches here. Let's say black says, oh, I think this move over here is way more important, right? And black plays here and goes, oh, well, I approached you, so you better watch out. I'm going to have 2 versus 1 here. But the thing is that this is Joseki. If white plays here, we have achieved Joseki. And if we know the definition of Joseki, it is an even result. It is something that has become even. A local result evenly, at least. So anything that can possibly happen here, if white doesn't mess up, it's just going to be an even result. And so one thing that we want to do before we play an enclosure, before we approach a corner, is go, is there anything on this board that is bigger than Joseki? And I would say, in this case, I would say probably not really. I think all of these moves are okay. We can play here. This would probably be my choice. I like this move. But I also think both of these enclosures are okay moves as well. So just keep that in mind. The way that generally the way that I teach it is, it's just good to be aware that an approach or an enclosure is not sensei. And it may not be the biggest move on the board. If there is something that is bigger than 5 points, generally. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, white does make a bit of a mistake here. I think this is bad. White should jump, generally. This is very rare. So, normally, when this happens, black is kind of looking for a slide. Or black is looking for a slide, but white is also kind of looking for a base. Or maybe a turn. Or just to play away, generally. But it's still really rare. Normally, you jump. And you're kind of looking for something like this, or you're just looking for this, or maybe you're looking for the tiger's mouth. Generally, you're really looking for these kinds of things, or some cases you are doing this too, but this can be a little bad because you're allowing black to get a really good wedge. But white decides to just be very, in a way, thick and to slide down. So here, for black, we're going to be looking for this move, or maybe a push and then to slide here. These slides are very undervalued, by the way. Slides are incredibly important. A lot of people do too much of this. We do this way too much. Slide. We got to slide more. Think of it like this. White says, hey, I'm going to press you down. Do you think black is going to go here, or do you think black is going to go here? I bet most of us would say, yeah, I'm going to push here, and I'm going to push here. And then what, you just go here? This is rarely good. Well, I don't want to say rarely because it's not entirely rarely. It can be okay, but it's a lot better to just break that pushing low as quick as possible. Here's the way that I look at it. If I am being told that I can take territory, I can take territory. However, that territory is on 2 lines. I'm getting 2 lines. Then white is benefiting more than me. White is benefiting more than me. Now, white isn't getting all of this, of course, but the expected amount is more than the second line territory, or 2 lines of territory that they're giving me. However, Little different if it's on the third line and they're pressing. If it's like this, I'll take that territory all day. Sure, you can give it to me. I will take that. But if they're pressing me down to the second line, it is not worth it to just sit here and push. You are not getting value out of that. That is not good enough territory. You need to slide as soon as possible. Sliding stops white from getting that wall. That wall is really nice for white to have. So when we're looking at it like this, if black wants to turn in this direction, it's going to be a slide. We slide. We do not want to give white this free wall in this direction. However, we see black play away. So this is a good example of kind of what I was talking about earlier. Black has made an approach. So we know that an approach was not the biggest thing on the board. We know that this is the biggest thing on the board because this is bigger than an approach. This is bigger than 5 points. This is bigger than an average move. As to where when black approaches here, this is valued at Joseki. White can play away here and find something that is way more important on this board and play toward that. So white can go here now. And then black goes, oh, well, I'm going to get a double approach here. That means I get more points than you in this lower left corner. No, that means you got Joseki out of this corner. You got an even result out of this corner. I really hope that makes sense because that is one of the biggest, honestly, one of the biggest elements that I have used in the past to improve is when I realize my opponents play a lot of useless moves. And I'm not even joking. Like, you will have a lot of people randomly go, oh, but I think approaching this corner is way bigger than this other really important thing going on this other side of the board. This idea of playing efficiency way too fast sounds absolutely weird to say way too fast and efficiency in the same sentence. But yes, it is possible to play way too efficient or, you know, way too fast, right? And so this idea that we're going to approach and that, you know, white's always going to respond, we do not want to rely on this responding. We want to make sure that we are getting our really big moves. Now, of course, Alexandra or David does respond and pincers. I think pincering is not very good here. The thing is, so, and so this is actually funny because I tell a lot of my students, if your opponent pincers you, you should really take that corner away. It's really good to be able to just take this really solid corner like this. This is a really nice corner. And this is kind of also an even result. Well, it is, and by kind of, I mean, it's Joseki, right? Obviously, it's an even result. But here's the thing, is that even though what black is taking second line here, the reason I'm mentioning this now is because I'm adding a little bit of defense, considering we talked about how if, you know, black gets pressed here, we don't take second line territory. So some people might look at this and go, wow, isn't that Joseki bad then? But the thing is, you are getting solid points in exchange for influence. That is it's a lot harder to deal with. Basically what I'm saying is the value is the same. That's why it is Joseki. So we may not know the exact value of what white is getting here, but we know what the value black is getting here. And whatever the value black is getting here, that is the value of what white is getting here. However, back to this, you know, we know black is getting less value because it's not Joseki. So we know that white is going to inherently get more on the outside versus something where it is Joseki. However, in this case, black should jump. This is a case where black should jump. I try not to tell my students to jump, but there are going to be cases where you will jump, and this is going to be one of them. So if white jumps with black, black can go ahead and surround the stone. This is a bit outdated of a Joseki. However, I will mention that it has become a little bit more played in modern times. I think I even played it in Chicago last year, not this year. And my opponent had actually done it in a very similar situation where they could not make life. They were surrounded. They were just dead. And that is one of the reasons why we are definitely choosing this. It's very hard for white to escape with this stone. And let's say they do live. The thing is, even if they live, I don't even think I can make a living position out of this. Maybe something like that. I guess white cannot live here no matter what. But, like, let's look at it from this point of view. Let's say that black decided they really wanted to be safe, right? Black really wanted to be safe. And so white goes back and lives. The thing is, white has to give up so much here to make life. So black got a lot of strength towards this lower left corner. And a lot of strength on the outside. And we just had that conversation how if you have to live with 2 lines of territory and your opponent gets tons of outside strength, it is probably not worth it. It's probably better to just give up the stones in general. So when white is pincering here, it is a bad decision because we inherently don't have a way to save this stone unless we make the immediate decision to play here. And this is, while it is acceptable, it's something you can do. This is a hill position in itself, and I'll go over it in another game. It is just not optimal. It's not the best thing you can do here as white. You generally don't want to have to do this, basically. But yeah. It's like if you make a mistake, and then you're like, oh man, I made a mistake. Well, I got to make this other decision now. It's like, sure, you can turn it into like something that might happen, but it's sad that it happened. You should have just not let it happen in the first place, you know? Okay, so this is also a really common mistake that I see. This is another thing that I don't allow my students to do is push here. This is a very common mistake, actually. I get really surprised how often I see it. In fact, I think I have this position coming up in another shape tax video. Though I think this is more liberty tax. In fact, it happens more often like this. And this is also bad. This is slightly worse. This is also bad, but not as bad. Generally, the move you want to play here is a knight's move. But knight's move is slightly outdated. Nowadays, white really likes just playing away. And we already established how large this move is for white. It's a very big move. So white playing on the bottom really isn't that important. But white pushing black for free down here really isn't worth it. The problem is that black is the one that is pushing, or white is the one that is pushing from behind. So it would be like white having to knight's move rather than black having to knight's move out, right? Now, obviously, black can't do this, but black would get, cut. So kind of back to this. White doesn't have to knight's move to stay ahead. White's already ahead in that race, right? So white doesn't really want to make this push. White would rather knight's move, right? White would rather make that knight's move. Because they're the ones pushing from behind. But in this case, I would say it's really not that important. Now, white plays this knight's move here on the right side, which is okay. I wouldn't call it the most important side. The thing is, if I'm going to play on this right side, it's going to be this move. I don't think this is the correct direction. I think it's better for white to play, to push up here, but I can see this being a decision. The problem is this area is very open for white. And so if black plays here, the problem is if we as white wanted to secure the right side, there's no good way to do that. Sure, we can, kick here, black goes down, and then if white wants to continue to secure it, the problem is, what do you do? What do you play here? Do you play here? Do you play here? It's too over-concentrated. So white would rather play away. But if white plays away from the right side, which you have to do, because there's no good move on the right side, then it's really easy for black to just get in here, right? It's really easy for black to just go, goodbye. You played all these moves for the right side of the board that you didn't end up getting to build, right? Now, however, black says, okay, I'm going to reduce that now. This is not good, though. We know this is not good because we just established that this right side is way too easy to access. But black is going, I will be really nice, and we'll pour some tea together, and I will only take a little bit. Too nice. I don't really believe in being nice and go. If me and my opponent are on the battlefield, one of us are coming out alive. This is too nice of a move. I'm not looking to just simply reduce a little bit. I want to take that top side. I think it's the biggest side. And then I'm going to ask white, how do you defend that right side? How do you defend it? Because I bet you can't. The best way is going to be here and then drop down, and then you play away. You play somewhere else on this board because you don't have a good move. If you can't find a good move on the side of the board you want to play, then it is probably not the best side to play on. Probably not the best side to play on. And in this case, we don't have a good move as white. Any move we use to defend leads to over concentration. So what we have to do is we have to wait for our opponent to show us a good move. Something that I tell my students is I say, hey, if you can't find a good move, your opponent probably needs to show you a good one. Maybe we need to wait for our opponent to show us. So if black tries to cut here, they showed us a good move. I know how I'm going to defend this right side now. I'm going to tell my opponent, hey, these stones here, they may not live to see tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and fight these. Do I really think they're going to come in here now? No, because they have these stones that they have to run here. They don't have time to play this anymore, right? Sometimes you need your opponent to show a good move. But, however, on the flip side, maybe they play in here now. Well, that's okay. There was no way we were going to get the whole thing anyway. But it has given us a new part of the board to play for. Now maybe we want to play for the center of the board. Maybe, maybe black is going to live in here. And there's nothing we can do about that, Maybe black goes ahead and lives there, right? Well, now we got strength towards the center. We traded away where our strength is at. Now, is it the best choice and whatnot? Not like, we could probably fight a little bit better. But for the most part, that's just how it is sometimes. We got to trade away where our strength is. For the sake of having good shape, for the sake of having good moves. But we'll see here, white still goes for that right side. So this looks like it's going to be a common trend where white is fighting for this right side. And black is probably fighting to reduce that side. However, we see that black actually finally realizes that how big this move is. Now, the unfortunate part is that this is now bigger. So white tries to defend by making this attachment. However, while I do often talk about how important it is to stay connected with something like this, I will tell you right now, if you can live on both sides, and this is a Panuki, by the way. If you got a Panuki on the other side, you should just believe you can live. You should believe your chances of living is very high. But if my stones, so if my pieces can live independently of each other, then I am going to go for this. This is what I will play. And if my side is a Panuki here, I will trust in the strength of my groups. I will trust in the strength of the shape I've made. It's very important that we learn to trust the strength of our shape. I mean, they're good shape, right? We make them with the intention that they're going to work, and we don't put enough trust in the good shapes that we make. Now, white plays a little bit light here. This is okay, but white really should make this attachment. There's no reason that we should not be able to capture the stone here on the right. and honestly, this is also a really big move for black. It might not seem like it, but when you look at this board, the thing is, there's not a lot of good moves on this board. So anybody that has seen any of my previous videos or my previous lectures with my students, I don't like extending from this corner. I don't like having an extension. If I'm ever going to build this side of the board, I'm going to build it in a really big way. I'm going to turn here. I might knights move, a large knights move here. I might knights move, but I don't like taking an extension from this corner. And the reason is because I want my opponent to play here. And I want to pincer that stone. This quarter is so strong. that when your opponent approaches it, you want to pincer it, because your stone on the other side can live independently of your group. So you don't need to extend from this. It's very slow to extend from this. It's very bad. So when I look at this board, I'm like, okay, I don't want to play the bottom, right? I could play here, and I think this is okay. I think this is probably what I would consider the next best thing. But even then, it's really not that big. So something that we often say, especially in my lessons, but also as a strong player, is if there's really nothing else on the board, we should look for the best end game. And in my opinion, right now, that would be this. This is a really nice end game move. And I know some of y'all are thinking, like, what do you mean end game? We're only, how many moves in? We're 43 moves in. What do you mean end game? I'm going to tell you right now, a strong player knows that the end game begins very early on to in the game. And it doesn't mean that we're going full-fledged into a bunch of end game moves. It just means that we have no idea what to do on this board, and we just know that end game is always big. End game is always big. And this is a really big end game move right now. So I'm like, hey, why not play here? The problem is I don't know the value of this move. And because I don't know the value of this move, I can't say it's bigger than the end game move. I can't say it's bigger than the end game move. But I know that the value is less than the end game move because I can tell you the value of the end game move. If I can't tell you the value of this, it often means that the value is too obscure. It's not something that I can put a value on because I don't know how much it's going to get. And I know that, you know, we're probably looking over here at the left Joseki, and they're just like, oh, you just said you didn't know the values you're going to get here. Yes, that is why I'm not a big fan of this Joseki. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's still a viable Joseki. It's a Joseki, right? So it's an even result. And it is something that I do play. I do sometimes take white in this lower left position. But it is a Joseki that I recommend. You know, I don't want to say recommend because generally, like I said, if you're black, you get the better end of the deal. You get solid points. You know how much it's worth. But the thing is, we at least know how much it's worth because we know how much the opponent is getting, right? We can value white down here in the lower left because we can value black. But yeah. Now, black Hone's here. Again, I think it's a little slow, and I would probably still go back to this. This is a really big endgame. There's not really a lot to be had here. Now, I know a lot of people are very afraid of these stones getting cut off, but we can actually not really care about these stones. These are actually pretty small. And there's not really a lot that, you know, black can gain from this. In fact, we often give these up when black pushes through. Now, here we're going to defend because we can if black was trying to push through. But in the situation where we don't have this white stone up here, like say it's over here, I am more likely just to allow those stones to die. They're not cutting anything. They're really not that important. Obviously, this position is not that great when white's stone is really far away. But the idea is that if white doesn't have a defending stone, it's just better to give the stone up. It's not really helping you. In fact, I had a game, and I have a video, a study group lecture video that I had, where my opponent did not know that, and it gave me a really nice significant advantage early on because he just cut those two stones off and thought it was his, you know, his advantage. But it is often really good idea to just give those stones up. But here we can see that white saves them. Now, I do think that white saves them fairly in this case. The moment that the cutting stones or the moment that the two stones become cutting stones, they now have really big value. So for example, if white just leaves them, they don't have a lot of value. But the moment that white played this move, white can no longer just sacrifice them. Otherwise, this move here at F14 looks really awkward. So when we cut here, they now have a lot of value, and we have to go back and save them. And we don't want to have to do that. Now, for some reason, white decides, now I'm going to defend. But white really either should take this stone. This stone is really big, by the way. Like, it is really big. It's definitely something that I'm gonna have to look at. Well, I mean, like they're gonna see this video, right? But it is a very important stone. It is very big. Now, black makes a really, or not black, white makes a really big mistake here. White pushes out the stone. Black also makes a really big mistake. Black connects. There is a way better move here for black. White should not be pushing out the stone. There is a net here. Now, I will say that I do think that they both may have known that the net was possible, but they may have also thought that this is a move that is possible for white. In which case, they both may have thought, oh, if I, for example, connect here, black captures the two stones, or oh, if this happens, white's just gonna get out, and I gotta extend, blah blah blah. However, if black actually just turns here, and I'm gonna be honest, like even this would still be much better for white than extending here. But technically, if black turns here and white tries to push out, we get white into a ladder. So white can't actually escape here. So this would be almost a game over move if black finds this move. I wouldn't say quite game over because the position's still okay, but it is a very difficult game for white after this move. Now, luckily for white, black did not realize. And now the advantage is really into white's favor because we can see that these stones here for black are heavily into white's territory. So something that might be better here for black is for black to pull out these stones. It is unfortunately very painful, but if white, plays here, we don't have to actually give up the whole left side. We just have to allow white to basically go back and live. As for this is a much more difficult result. And so now the game has become very fighty. Now, something to mention about this is I don't like these kinds of games. I do find some excitement in the fighting, but overall, I really dislike games where it gets to the point where I have to die to lose, or my opponent has to die to lose, basically. Like if it gets down to where both players are playing this crazy go, like Fox players, right? That's not to say that my students are Fox players. I mean, they play on Fox, so, they are, in a way, Fox players. But more so, I meant like the Fox style, right? Where it gets into this all or nothing death. You don't have to play like this, but it does require us to pay a lot more attention to our weak stones. We have to go, okay, these are weak. We don't wanna base this game all off of this one kill. However, now we're in a situation where black has to live, otherwise they lose the game. Black has to 100% live. There is no choice here. So black says, okay, I'm gonna try to come out. White says, no, I'm gonna block you. Black jumps. I mean, these all make sense to me. So black is looking to kind of exploit the weakness here. And of course, white doesn't want that, black to get a tiger's mouth, right? So white takes that away, and then black connects. I think connecting is a slight mistake. I would probably be looking for a move like this. The problem is I don't really see a good way out for black. So my guess is that black is going to need to somehow make life inside. That's probably going to be the best method, is somehow trying to find that eye space in here. And we do want to make, note that white isn't completely alive or safe in this corner either. White has to make Hanes like this or bases, and these are really good opportunities to get eye space. Not guaranteed to work, but that is probably what we're going to have to do. Now, I think white plays a little soft here, because we already established that black can make some semblance of an eye. So it's probably better to basically kind of poke at these points or reinforce this upper left with a move like this. or even maybe a Kosumi here. Probably something more like this J17 would be my guess. Now black turns, and I think this is a little slow for white. White is scared, and I don't think white should be scared here. White should Hane. There is strength in Hane. There is strength in Hane. Very important to hear that. I think generally white maybe didn't want black to get this turn, or maybe to peep this cut. But I think these are all bad moves for black, so I think it's okay if black plays that. As in, like, it's okay to allow black to play those moves. You know, if white gets these tiger's mouths in return, then the result can't be bad for white. So I would just say I'm going to Hane and I'm going to extend. And that allows black to get out much easier. So I would say the game's probably a little back to even now. Okay, so white is peeping. Be very careful about the timing of this move. It's probably okay here, but generally we do want to be careful about the timing. It's not always sente. Yeah, it's probably okay. White takes a pretty normal shape. And then black says, okay, I'm going to tiger smell. So we know that at this point, black's focus is all on living, which makes a lot of sense. White says, okay, I'm going to table shape, make some strength. Black plays a knight's move. Ooh, I like this move by white. So white says, hey, knight's moves can be cut. They can be cut in two ways. They can be cut like this, and they can be cut like this. Now, most of the time, the best way to cut it is like this. This is usually the best way to cut it. In this case, we can't cut it like this. This is a little scary. It's a little scary. Probably still maybe okay for white. Probably. But it is a little scary. So I would normally aim for this cut. Now, I will add that I don't know if white can hold this. I would probably want to add some strength here firsthand. But for the most part, I think this is something that I would also be looking for to play. It's okay. So just remember that when you're trying to escape, there are a multitude of ways you can escape. And usually the best ways are like this. It's always good to go, okay, I gotta give up something. Because if black pushes like this, black is giving you the go-ahead above the two stones. But if you try to go like this, you're going into this shape or this shape. Now, this shape's okay. But sometimes you don't want to do that. And you want to be a little bit stronger. So instead, you get black to push you and say, okay, I let you through in exchange for a slightly stronger shape. However, I want to mention again that we do need to be a little careful about these things because there is some weakness here. It's very important that we fix our weaknesses. So my guess is black is just going to be making as many good shapes as possible to make life. And white is probably going to be trying to make sure that black cannot make two eyes. However, I think it's a really good idea to just let black live. Personally, I think we've actually gotten quite a bit as white out here. Like, my goal is to get this. If black pushes here to make life right now, then I'm probably going to be looking to capture these two stones and say, hey, I'm in a good position. I'm probably ahead. And we know it. This move here still exists. This is a very big move that I don't know when either player is going to get. But it is really something that we should pay attention to. Now, black may not push here at 4. It's also good to note that black cutting here is also sente. White has to fix this top side. So it's really hard to kill this. So it's kind of like, why waste time on it when it's just too hard to kill? So it's probably better to just solidify that right side and say, hey, this is my territory. But white continues to try to go for the kill. And now we're going down a route where white is at risk here, and this can be really bad, you know. Now luckily black did leave this stone here, so even if white gets cut off on one side, white can still go back and capture the stone, which is pretty important. But however, it's still really dicey because we know technically there's no way white has time for this. White actually has to go here. Otherwise, black will get the pullback, and this would basically be game over. There really isn't a good way for white to be able to live on this right side. It's pretty much impossible. So white is in a situation where white has to basically go, okay, I'm going to play here. I am going to take that stone. So it should be here, because if black pushes here, and white goes for the stone, now black can 100% cut off this stone here at the top side of the board. But yeah. But let's go ahead and go forward. Let's go forward. Nope, no empty triangles. Something that we say in my something that's really important that I say with my students is, if our choice is an empty triangle, there's probably a better move. I know that this move is probably okay, but it's probably best to just go ahead and make life up there. Probably best just to go make life. If my choice is sacrificing the 3 stones, I will take that. I will accept that. That is acceptable to me. Black is being too soft here. So black should connect, because obviously we have, we basically, like, white can't hold this. White cannot hold this right side. It's not possible. It's just not possible. So black should just connect the stone. But at this point, black is still trying to look for that second eye, while white is trying to just, like, make sure that they're alive. So now the result has kind of went back slightly back to even again, and black has achieved those 2 eyes. Now I'm not sure why black plays here. Fear is really bad. Just remember, it's really bad to base a decision off of being terrified. Something that I say very often. And I know you heard me say that a lot already. And it's like, I say this a lot, I say this a lot. I do have a lot of, I'm very principled when I play Go. And I use a lot of proverbs, and I say a lot of things that help me make my decisions. And one of those things that I use to help me stay away from playing moves due to fear is, I would rather lose the game than play a move because I'm scared of it. We can see that if black connects here, white has to connect, and then black can still go ahead and make this eye. Now, I don't think they need that move to live. You could still go here, right? You can also, maybe it's actually okay to do this. I guess it's okay. But basically, we can see that before black does that, black just goes here. Now white gets to go and cut off this top side, and there's not really a lot that we can do about it, So we can go ahead and play here to get sensei to make sure that we have the second die as well, right? But the thing is, we still lose that top side stone. There is absolutely no reason we should be losing that stone. If white tries to go here, this is really big. I'll take this over that, because now if white, if white connects, then the whole corner dies. Well, probably not the whole corner, but almost the whole corner, right? And if white plays here, now the whole corner dies, or allows black to connect up to these 3 stones. So the problem is that white doesn't really have time to go back to 2. So white has to connect here. White doesn't have a choice. So now if you were afraid, you can go back here, right? But we don't want to base our decisions off of fear. We want to base it off of what we read. And I would rather lose a game based on what I read, rather than going, you know what, I think my opponent, they might have something here. I'm just gonna connect to be, maybe it's better safe than sorry. I don't believe in the better safe than sorry. And I just don't. It doesn't help me make good decisions. I think fear is good to have, but I do think it is something that helps us to know where to look for things that are scary, not to tell us to respond to something that is scary. Do not make a decision based off of your fear. Make a decision off of what you read. You fear an area, read it. You fear a move, read it. If you can't find anything, then don't play it. Turns out there was something, that's okay. Do better next time. You'll do better next time. But if you respond, it's going to be really hard for you to learn when and when you shouldn't respond to things. And in Go, it's really important to not always respond to your opponent's moves. Now, I didn't expect this video to be 50 minutes long, or this review to be 50 minutes long. I got so lost in just explaining things to y'all. So we're going to go ahead and go forward here. And I'm going to go through this ending a little bit fast comparatively to the rest of the game. I don't think there's any big swings. I don't think. So like here, we can see that black doesn't even play this Hane here. They play a little bit more fearful. Instead, we can see that black makes this connection here. This is very bad for our Go. We don't want to do this. So this is something that I would mark for Alexandra, for example, and be like, hey, I noticed in your games you're playing based on fear, not what you're reading, right? And so this would be a bad habit that we would be picking up, and we need to make sure that we squash it when it comes to looking back at our habits as black. I guess it's okay. I would probably... This stone is very hard to give up. It's a very hard stone to give up, because I don't really think this is worth it. And allowing black to just capture the stone and then we have to connect anyway is very painful. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay. Yeah, and you can kind of see here, we're allowing black to reduce a lot more than we should. So white should pull back here. The only thing we might be afraid of, you know, is maybe this... you know, this elephant's eye, but I would probably be okay with this rather than letting black push in here as much as they did. So black got back to the very important end game, and so at this point we could say black is doing really well with the end game comparatively to white. But that's okay. Like I said, David's a new student for me. So we'll talk a lot about endgame with him and stuff like that. Because endgame is a big one with me. I'm not like super amazing at endgame, but if you can just understand that playing endgame as soon as possible, or endgame like moves, really heightens your chance of winning games. And I think black is doing a good job at that so far. Obviously, with some stuff that they could do slightly better, but for the most part, it looks like black is doing well with it. So we can see here another instance where black kind of plays a bit of fear. So black says, okay, I don't want to play this because I don't want to, you know, I don't want something to end up in Seki here. But it is way better. It is way better for you to just let this happen and be like, oh, I made a mistake. Because here's the thing, this is, so for example, right now, this is a 12-point game for black. This is a 12-point game for black, right? But I actually know that this game ends with black winning by only 1.5. That's a lot of points to lose in endgame. And I know a lot earlier, the score difference was even bigger. That means black has lost a few points due to, well, I mean, lost and gained. Obviously, we acknowledge that black played a lot of really big endgame moves. Black got back to a lot of the big endgame moves. But the thing is, Black still lost a lot of points with moves like this. This is going to be one that they lost a lot of points with. These kinds of defensive moves are very, very bad, especially when we don't read them. Now, obviously, I understand that to my students here, this is a tournament for them, and they want to be as safe as possible, you know, for their event. But I do think it is really important that we try to make sure that even in tournament play, we are going, I read that. I don't think there's a way that this can happen. I am not going to be afraid of this, right? But yeah, for the most part, I think that's everything. Yeah, we can even see white still tries in this corner. White still tries in this corner. Obviously, it ended up being nothing, but white could have tried in the other corner, and it still would have ended up being nothing. It's just scary is all it is. And here we can see it again, because black can call that bluff and say, that's one eye that you can make. I can still make two eyes here. And if you throw in here, that is eye versus no eye, right? So we want to be very careful about being very fearful. But I think that's really everything. All right, yeah. Well, hopefully this review is useful to them, and hopefully this review is useful to anyone watching. And good luck to both David and Alexandra in the Stomping Grounds Cup. Good luck to them, and I will see you all in the next video, and hopefully another one just like this. Bye.